Asako, it's fantastic to be able to speak to you. Butter has been an absolutely phenomenal success in the UK and elsewhere, of course. And I wondered, first of all, whether you are surprised that the novel has chimed so well with readers in the UK.
I was very surprised. I wasn't expecting the level of recipient at all, really. And I wasn't really, first of all, expected to be it to be translated into English. How this came about was the chapter one was auctioned, and then we sold the rights. So it's not as if I was trying to sell my book with great efforts into the international market. I was very surprised that we even sold the rights for the book. And then I really wasn't even expecting for this to be published. So everything is a wonderful surprise.
This is quite a difficult question to ask of authors sometimes, but do you have any sense of what it is about butter that has made it so popular with readers in the UK?
There was something that I noticed in my author's tour over 10 days in the UK. And I have to add, the reason why I hadn't expected the level of great reception, it's not really my humility as Japanese, nothing like that at all. The reason for that was because I thought the UK is the country that had already achieved gender equality. I thought it was somewhere that didn't have that kind of problem. I'd expected British readers to perceive this book as almost like a dystopian world. But when I met readers firsthand, I've heard their voices expressing how difficult it was to balance work-life balance as well as really glass ceilings as women. And lookism was really a real problem, how they were perceived based on how they look. So I have realized that the UK, in fact, is not really a utopian society.
Far from it. um, the book was in part inspired by a real life case that happened in Japan, which was dubbed the Konkatsu killer. Um, would you mind telling us a little bit about that case, and I suppose what it was in that case that you took inspiration from?
This case is extremely famous in Japan. It was widely reported. But I have to tell you, I'm not, in fact, much interested in the reality and the truth behind this case. I don't really care whether she has done the suspected murder or not. What I was drawn to was how fanatic the media in Japan had reported this case and the slightly skewed version of how some of the facts had been reported. For example, the accused murderer, she went to Luke Holden Blue, the chef training school, which is internationally widely known. And it's very clear that this is not somewhere that a mere um, homely cook would go to train as a would-be bride, really. It's not that kind of school. It is for a very serious chef training. However, Japanese media had instantly assumed that the suspected killer had gone to the school just to learn the skills
Mm,
to become a would-be bride, really. They reported the school as somewhere mystical that would teach women to how to charm men to get their way in through stomach. And I just had a slight issue with that, how they assumed because this is very easy for them to find out the reality of Luke Holden Blue. It's extremely famous, but they didn't do the work to really
mm.
find out.
Food is, of course, absolutely central to this book. And as well as loving food myself, I also love books and films which are about food. But the relationship to food is actually really, really complex in this book. So I wanted to begin by asking you about the relationship that Rika Mashida has, the journalist. Um, can I ask you to speak a little bit about the capacity for food to awaken happiness and even desire in the individual first?
Yes, I believe it is possible for food to awaken happiness and desire within us. And this is some of the ideas that were explored by other writers, for example, Proust and Okamoto Kanako. The reason being because food is one of the only things that could reproduce, evoke certain feelings. it is extremely difficult to recapture the feelings or certain emotions that were experienced by other individuals. But food is the only thing that we could re-experience some of the things other people had created and felt through the recipes. I think that is really the magic of recipes. Food can really evoke the emotions that were long forgotten as well. I don't believe there are magic per se in this world so much, but recipe is possibly something that is closest to it. For example, if we eat certain kind of foods that are linked to our childhood, we are taken back to that moment. We even can remember being with the family members that are no longer here as well.
That's a fantastic answer. So thank you. Um, on the flip side of that, our accused killer, Manako Kaji, has managed to foster these relationships with men who don't cook for themselves. And she steps into this sort of nourishing maternal role of the feeder. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about this idea of loneliness and neglect from the male character's points of view.
Yes, I will answer from the perspective of gender differences and perceptions in Japan. Um, it is very frustrating as a feminist because this benefits nobody in our society. Um, Men who are taking on the oppressor roles, they are suffering as well greatly because there are a lot of pressure on them. And most of them, a lot of them, in fact, genuinely believe that the problem lies with women because women are not submissive enough. A Japanese writer, he's also a politician, has said something that I believe is problematic. He'd said, to tackle the low birth rate in Japan, we need to do the following. First, prohibit women to go to university. Second, make it obligatory for women to get married until the age of 25. Third, take away all the uteruses of women who refuse to have children. I believe this is quite significant, so I would love the British media to report this serious utterance that this politician has made.
That is genuinely shocking.
Yes, and a lot of men genuinely believe that as long as women are submissive, as long as they care for the men, everything would work, the society would function well. And I think Kaji Manako is somebody who really, really exploited this concept, this belief that a lot of men have.
For the women in this book, there is this extreme pressure to keep weight down. And so, of course, that leads to a very, very different relationship to food, which is rooted in misogyny. And I wondered if you could explain a little bit how that features in Japanese culture first, and then whether you see that in fact at play elsewhere in the world. And I think actually from the answer you gave earlier about your tour of the UK, I suspect that your answer may be that you do see the same kind of pressures elsewhere.
From the Japanese side, I feel like the society encourages women to keep the weight down because the slimmer you are, the younger you look. I mean, that's the perception that the society really seems to advocate. If you're slim, then you look more like a girl, and that really evokes the innocence. And if you walk around the streets, you would see a lot of adverts encouraging women to keep the weight down in order to look younger. And this is applicable in both plastic surgery as well as many various beauty treatments. I thought this phenomenon was really limited to Asia, but when I went to the UK and spoke to the British readers, I did feel that a similar pressure did, in fact, exist. I had seen similarity in perceptions in India as well. However, I think the difference in certainly what I've observed in the UK is that even if the society felt a certain way towards women who aren't slim, I didn't really get the sense that there was an overt prejudice or derogatory comments publicly made. And this was certainly different compared to Japan.
The relationship between Rika and Manako is absolutely fascinating in this book, and it changes several times through the course of the book. And I wanted to ask whether those shifts in power between them were always planned to be part of the novel, or if it was the writing of it that revealed the opportunity for so much change between them.
This shift in the power balance, I didn't really anticipate that before I started writing. I'd mentioned that I believe the magic lies in the recipes. I'd done some research in what those who are held in the detention center can eat, and I've asked what could be brought in, and there are strict limitations. Manako doesn't really have any freedom in what she chooses to eat at all. But through Manako teaching Rika about her memories related to food, as well as giving her recipes, she managed to relive some of the happier times in her life. I did plan both characters being able to relive certain memories, but I wasn't expecting the power balance to shift so much. I believe it is linked to this fact that the moment feelings can be evoked again through reenacting, reproducing the recipes.
There's a line in the book that really stood out to me, which is a gourmand was ultimately a seeker of the truth. And I wondered if you could explain a little bit about what you meant with that statement.
I think the truth of this life that we are living is that we exist based on the sacrifices made by other lives, really. We are taking on other lives. Otherwise, we would not be able to survive. I am not a vegan, but if I try and really, really go down to this, what I have just said, I believe I may turn vegan. I may have to. I think foodies are extremely sensitive to certain facts. For example, the freshness of the ingredients or the seasonalities. If they ate certain portion of it, or if the season had shifted, those ingredients would not be available the next moment. So they are constantly faced with the fragility of life. I'm not a gourmand, I would say. I'm not as sensitive, but maybe somebody like Monaco are extremely aware of the ephemeral nature of life, really.
We've spoken a little bit about the individual's relationship with food, but it seemed to me that many of the characters in the book are actually yearning for a connection and a conversation with each other, which is slightly being thwarted by the fact that they eat takeaway food and convenience food on their own. And I wondered whether you agreed that that was sort of a fair summation, and if you are personally an advocate for the power of home cooked food to actually bring people together.
I don't advocate for home cooked meal per se at home. I don't think it's necessary for everyone to be present at a dinner table. And I also love a convenience store that was depicted by Sayaka Murate's convenience store woman.
Another fantastic book.
There are many options in Japan, you see. Some of the options being to buy food at the convenience store, you cook the food that you want to eat yourself, or go to the restaurants. And even with restaurants, there are many different options, anything from very expensive to very affordable. I believe it's a continuum. It's a bit like a gradation of what you can choose. And I would like everyone to be able to choose based on what they really want. I want them to build that capacity within themselves to really feel what they are craving and choose something that they truly, truly are seeking. Based on this relation continuum, I want them to find something that really fulfills them.
One of the other arching themes of the book is this idea of escaping the tyranny of worrying what others think about you, and learning to sort of accept yourself as you are. This is something, of course, easier said than done. And I wondered if you have any tips on how people can achieve that.
I believe everyone has some activities that they like to participate in, but it's some things that they're not that good at. I think it's great for them to keep on doing these activities. It may not produce anything. It may not be something that you necessarily perform in front of other people, but there is a great joy in practicing these. For example, I love singing, but I'm not great at it. However, I had planned to sing at a event, and I honestly think people wouldn't really pay that much interest if I was a great singer. But because I'm bad at it, a lot of my writer friends in Japan are planning to come to this event to hear me sing.
This is an event that I want to see. I want to see the footage of Asako taking the stage and singing as only she can sing.
Um,
Just to finish off, I understand that you once worked for a confectionery company in Japan, and you had said that many of the ideas for things that you came up with were basically never adopted because they were considered too strange. I wondered if you had a favorite creation that you wanted to share with us that never saw the light of day.
20 years ago in Japan, if you saw something green in confectionery, it had to taste like matcha. My idea was to create a cake made with pistachio. So this very long cake. And I loved pistachio. It has a certain flavor, fragrance, texture, everything. I loved it. But the reception within the company was we can't create something that is green that doesn't taste like matcha. And what is this shape? It looks like caterpillar. No, we cannot sell this. But I think now pistachio has become one of the very popular flavoring in cakes. I think it would have done very well.
I think it would have done very well. And also, one of the most popular and recognizable cakes in the UK is shaped exactly like a caterpillar. So I think you were just ahead of your time.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, thank you. So this is something that I have to say about the British culture. A lot of the media interviews that I do with the British media have been wonderful, really, in comparison to the Japanese media. A lot of the questions that the Japanese media ask, I struggle to answer, but your questions have been fantastic. It's really great to chat to you. It's so much fun. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Asako. That's really nice of you to say. It's really great. I'm so grateful to have the time that you give me to speak to you about butter, and also to Eyre Kurasawa, the interpreter who's made this conversation possible. It's really great to speak to you about the book, and it's not possible for me to do that without Eyre's contribution. So a huge thank you to her. And I think also probably worth mentioning your UK translator Polly Barton, who's done such a fantastic book, fantastic job translating Butter for English readers. It's a fantastic read. I enjoyed it so much, and enjoyed even more being able to speak to you about it. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.